My friend Graham needs some wheels turning up for one of his projects that he's got in mind on a garden railway, and he sent me 4 excellent quality, because they're Walsall, cast iron wheel castings. Fine as far as it goes. An immediate difficulty, however, that presents itself is that the drawing Graham sent calls for a wheel diameter of 48mm over the tyre, and unfortunately, best I can work out, the unmachined diameter over the tyre of these castings is about 46.7mm, so clearly rather than smaller than the 48mm desired. I did speak to Graham and he said, you know, do what you can, don't worry about it, but it's kind of irritating. He did send me another drawing of a prototype, and I guess this is the thing he's thinking he might like to build or get built or something, which is an 042 Tralee and Dingle light railway. There's a name to conjure with. Little I don't know what you call it really, tank engine, I don't know, a bit odd really, seems to have a cabin at each end. I don't know much about trains really. Anyway, so that's clearly what he wants, and according to this drawing, the diameter of the prototype wheels is 3.5 feet. So if I've done the maths right, and I usually don't, but anyway, 3.5 feet over the tyre on the prototype, at a scale of about 1 to 19, which I guess is what he's working to, actually, by my division, comes to a diameter over the tyre of 48.79mm, which is even bigger than the 48 on the drawing, which, you know, you can't really get that out of this tyre, sorry, out of this casting. Nothing to do with steam engines, but all my life I've suffered with insomnia, which means I keep waking up all night long, and the brain won't go to sleep. And I put these castings aside because this whole issue of they're supposed to be 48mm and there's no way I could get more than about 45 out of these things if I turned them, was kind of bugging the back of my brain. Anyway, about 1 o'clock this morning, I'm tossing and turning, and there must have been a flash of blood go to somewhere. Because I suddenly had the thought, well, in prototype, wheels were not machined in one go from a solid casting. Typically, there would be a hub and a separate tyre that would be turned, and then heat shrunk onto the hub, probably with a bit of finish turning in the workshop to true everything up. And the wonderful thought I had was, well, if that worked on the big thing, why wouldn't the same approach work on the small thing? And I could actually get these tyres and whatnot to, you know, give or take the right scale size. And I must have been so relieved, because I think at that point I fell asleep again. So the first task, therefore, is to find some steel with an OD of probably 55mm, something about 2¼ inches or something, 2 1/8, in order to think about making the tyre, or 4 tyres. So I was rummaging about and I found me big blobs of round bar, but these are all 2.5 to 3 inches. So if you could imagine, time I put a hole through the middle of, I don't know, 40mm or something, the pile of swarf and the sheer waste and the time and effort involved is absurd. And that's before I reduce the outside diameter down to the sort of 52mm over the sticky outy bits on wheels, for what you call it now, but anyway, you know, the bit that guides it along the rails. Anyway, massive amount of turning, so I don't favour that very much. Anyway, lots more rummaging around under my bench and elsewhere, and I suddenly found this. Clearly a hub from some sort of motor vehicle. Don't know when I got it, don't know what I got it off of, don't know why I've got it, don't know how long I've had it, but the good news is this OD here is about 55mm, all but perfect, mate. And even better, it's got a hole down the middle which reduces the amount of effort required to make the hole of the right diameter, and it's perfectly clear that if I bore this thing to an appropriate diameter and then by shrinkage or Loctite or something, I will be able to put a tyre on these castings which will enable me to machine these wheels to the appropriate scale size. I mean, how mad is this? But anyway, so what I'm going to do, I think, I'm going to go out to the big reciprocating bandsaw. No, not bandsaw, the reciprocating saw, not the bandsaw, because the bandsaws take forever on this. And cut the flange off, which will leave me with some circular material of several diameters, from which I can then work upon and effectively make the tyres. And there we go. I guess this thing at some stage would make a nice bottom bearing for a model crane or something, I don't know, something I wanted to rotate anyway. So I have to bear that in mind. But anyway, this is the bit we want today. So we can now make a start on turning up the tyres. Once I've warmed up, I've been doing this outside in the shed where it's about -2 and I'm frozen to bits, so I'm going to go warm up for it. The plan is to bore this hub out to about 46mm or thereabouts, not critical, in the bore, then turn the 4 driving wheels to be compatible with that bore, so again approximately 46mm actual dimensions to be decided, and I think what I'll do, so slightly less, I think I'll actually if not exactly finish profile the tyres in this while this setup's here, but at least get them to something very close. So there'll be the minimal turning and truing up once they're mounted on the hub. That's my current plan, see how we get on. Just rough turning at this stage. About 10's our cut, so 20's our off the bore. Is about as much as I've got a bit of drive belt slip by the sound of it. This is about as much as this lathe wants at this stage. So I'm turning the outer dimension of the flange down to 53mm, not the 52 that the spec would suggest. And the reason for that is, in my experience on the Garden Railway, being on the track lane, a few thou extra flange steps often makes the difference between coming off the rails at the points or elsewhere and not. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, based on my own poor track laying, of course. Gauge 1 model railway standards call for about a 3-degree cone on the tread, and I'm going to have to do that on my top slide. So actually I'll set the top slide to 2 degrees. Don't think that'll make much odds really. And also a 10-degree cone where the tread meets the flange, and I'll set that 10 degrees with this tool in a kind of rough and ready fashion using my little protractor job. So we'll see how we get on really. This bit's going to have to be done by hand using the top slide. Not brilliant, but we've got far to go. Now, because I don't want to mess about with this tool post and the angles to which I've set it, because I'd have to start again if I alter any of this, I'm going to attempt to part the first tyre off using oh, excuse me, my homemade rear tool post, parting off post, which I made donkeys years ago. At this stage I'm also not using back gear, a bit scary. We'll try the lowest speed on the inverter drive. I did the sensible thing, I've engaged back gear. One tyre down, 3 more to go. Because I'm doing this for somebody else, I must admit I'm finding this extremely stressful. If it was for myself I wouldn't be bothered, so I'm going to give it to Graham. Ho hum. The 4 tyres are mercifully done. They will need a bit of finish turning when they're mounted on their respective wheel centres, whatever. Just a few thou, but they're done. This has been, without question, the hardest turning job I have ever done. And the reason is the steel. Whatever this old hub, from which I got this lot, whatever that's made of, I can assure you is not free machining mild steel. And I suppose with hindsight one might have expected that. And the sheer difficulty of getting through it, I don't know how many carbide tips I've broken, can't adequately be explained. Oh, right or wrong, I'm not sure. I can just chuck. Also, model engineers have rough turned every one of these wheels on the outside, which is, at least I assume it was them. Anyway, that's very kind, because that's easier. So I can chuck carefully by that turn diameter, and what I'm going to do is face the boss off, face the outer rim off, very carefully, bearing in mind I haven't got much to play with. Turn this portion here to about 1820 millimeters, I think, to start with, if I can, and then drill and ream the centre 3/16, and the plan is to then fit every wheel to an arbor turned true in the chuck for final finishing of the boss, and hopefully they'll all be the same. I'll do one first and see how I'll have to do all these and we'll see how we get on. Right, first one rough turned on one face. In the end I turned this diameter to the finished dimension. I think I quoted millimetres before, but actually I'm getting completely muddled here between a metric drawing and the imperial lathe. This OD is 183. No, that's wrong as well. Jesus. 1.813 inches. The boss in the middle is 32 excuse me, still got a bit of this bloody COVID. It's 32 thousandths, about 32nd, proud of the rim, and the bore is carefully drilled and reamed 3/16 diameter. So I'm going to do the other three. Right, I've almost finished turning the first wheel as a tester. The tyres Loctited on. The back is faced and turned. It's just slightly over width. What needs to happen is to mount it on an arbor and 4-jaw. Just true it all up. And ultimately get all the tyres to exactly the same diameter within a thou or so, and then the correct centre, drill and tap for the crank pin, and that'll be them done. The methodology is I've got my homemade rather large extended centre in the tailstock, the sort of half finished wheel blank is mounted on an arbor and set to run true in the 4-jaw chuck by this diameter here, which I assume was put on by Walsall Engineering who make these castings, and then machine all this off to the correct diameter to accept the steel tyre, Loctite that on, and then finish the wheel to width, really, or thickness, or whatever you want to call it. Got a bit of a squeaky drive belt this morning for some reason. Anyway, so this is wheel number 3, and this part of the operation is to reduce the thickness of the wheel down to the thickness of the steel tyre, which I Loctited on yesterday. And in so doing expose the spokes, because it will do. As you get to the thickness of the tyre, the spokes will become opened out or exposed, whatever you want to call it. That's making an unholy mess, unfortunately, with all the cast iron. Never mind. So having reduced the thickness of the wheel to almost the right size, it's still a bit over width, and got the flange down to close to the appropriate thickness. This is about 70 thou, needs to be about 60 really, but I'll do that from the other side. At this point I removed the normal crank tool and replace it with this kind of funny shaped hooky tool, which I will use to just relieve the back face of the wheel a little bit further, and finishing it exposing the spokes from the rear. So I just relieved the back of the wheel, not completely to the outer diameter, by about 10 thou, to just expose the rest of the spoke. Bosses drilled and tapped 6BA for the coupling rods. Just got to make up a couple of axles, 28mm, whatever that is in proper money, and won't finally assemble them obviously, just have to be a loose fit, because Graham will have to do the final fit when he gets the whole lot in his frames, whatever that may be. As I understand it, he said he didn't want these bosses, because I think this is an inside framed loco he's making, and anyway this lot would get in the way of the coupling rods really, so I'm not too sure what all that's about. So the axles will finish, that I make, will finish flush with the wheel, and if that ain't right, well, it's easy enough to make some more.